Hi, I'm Andy Grogan-Kaler from the University of Michigan School of Social Work. Thanks for listening to this segment. I'm here with colleagues Heather and Yakuta, who I'll ask to introduce themselves in a minute, and they come to us from the Performance Measurement Initiative here at the University of Michigan. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're happy to be here.
Why don't you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about who each of you is, and then I'll get started with the questions that I have.
Great. I'm Heather Esper. I'm at the William Davidson Institute, and there my role is as Senior Program Manager.
And I'm Yakuta Fatehi, and I'm on the same exact team as Heather. And I'm a Program Manager on the PMI team.
So I wondered if we could start. I wanted to ask, could you tell me each a little about the social issues that you're concerned about or that the initiative is concerned about?
Yeah. Personally, I think how I got started in this line of work or in this general field of working in emerging markets was from a young age, I found that I couldn't grapple with the inequality I was seeing around the world. And so I kind of found myself throughout school and then through college beginning to take courses to try to understand more why does this inequality exist, and what's the context like, what are some of the solutions. So then I naturally, I think, found myself at the William Davidson Institute, which focuses on sustainable solutions to some of these problems.
Yeah, and for me, I grew up in Kuwait, and I'm Indian, so every summer we went back home to India, and Kuwait is very different from India, and so just looking at the inequality in people's incomes and how they were living, I was really interested in wanting to give back dignity to pavement dwellers that you see everywhere in Bombay. And often when you grow up there, you become, you just get used to it. But I think because I lived in a different place, it was still very shocking to me. So for me, it was a lot about giving dignity back to people and how do you break the cycle of poverty, because a poor person does not have enough money to send their child to a good school and give them good education, and that then leads to a poor job, and they have children who then are raised in poor housing structures, and it just continues. It's just nonstop. And so I was very interested in finding a path for myself that could make some sort of impact and break that cycle of poverty, give children a chance to get a good education, to meet their full potential.
Okay.
Yeah, and like Heather said, the William Davidson Institute is focused on finding what role can business play in reducing these inequalities and improving the well-being of lives around the globe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How, I suppose for each of you, how does that then lead into the research work that you do?
Yeah, for me, I think a lot of it is there's so much bad research out there. So the initiative that we work on is called Performance Measurement, and it's about making sure you're measuring things correctly. Mm-hmm. Because Richard Stone once said something along the lines like, how little you can say without measurement, but how important it is to get right. And there's so much bad data out there, and people are making decisions based on that data. So for us, or for me, within the Performance Measurement Initiative, it's really important. We think a lot about how do you measure some of these areas of well-being correctly, and how do you then use that information to improve a business and how it's meeting the needs of those it seeks to serve.
Yeah, and I think what's really important about research is that it can help you untangle very complex situations, the world is not a simple place, and especially where you find in intense poverty, it's not as simple as somebody not working hard. In fact, at least all the people that I have worked with and talked to that come from low-income households, they are some of the most hardworking people. And so what's more important to understand is that complex setting that they dwell in. And research helps untangle all of that. It helps if you are using the right methods and you can really back up your methods. Research gives you very, very good scientific answers to figuring out a solution that sometimes may be context specific, but also if you design your study in a particular way, can be used in to generalize across the globe. So,
and to jump on what you're saying is, one of the things I like about how we do our research is that we involve those that are part of the solution. So a lot of the data that I had seen before I started working at the Davidson Institute and like through my training in school was really focused on like one person's perspective, and you began to see some triangulation of information. But we at WDI, we go and talked to the individuals who are either selling a product or even sourcing a product to a company. And understanding their perspective, I think, leads a lot of new light into what potential solutions could be.
Thank you. What out of all this, what answers would you say that you are trying to learn?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm trying to understand a holistic picture. So in my training, I had learned about Amartya Sen, and he believes in these different areas of well-being, and it's not just about one area, but it's an individual as a whole. And with the research we're trying to do, we're trying to understand what is that holistic picture. What are the different ways someone might be affected by poverty, or maybe how could they move out of poverty? And so it's not just about their income, but it's also about changes within that individual. So like their psychological health, physical health, as well as the relationships they have with others, the environment, and at home. So I think an example from our research that I found really interesting is one of the first projects I worked on at WDI was with Vision Spring. And it's this company in India, and they sell eyeglasses to the poor. But it was interesting because we thought a hypothesis that many went into the study with was that the eyeglasses would improve productivity of individuals because now they could see better and they're doing this near work. But what actually we ended up finding was people also really valued the free time that they had. They didn't just want to increase their productivity exponentially, but they wanted to have more time to spend with family, or just use it however they want it. And I think that speaks to understanding an individual as a whole versus just assuming that everyone's just out there to keep making more money.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I think what I want to add to it is that, we, like, man is a social being. You interact with people, but also companies interact with people, and society is a combination of people interacting with one another. So what role does business have in reducing this inequality? What role do they play in increasing the inequality? I think those are some of the questions we want to, or I want to understand, and then also see how businesses can reduce poverty. And so a lot of our research focuses on working with social enterprises. They can be really small social enterprises with very few thousands of dollars in revenue, but also larger MNCs that have billions of dollars in revenues. And what role can these types of small to large businesses have in employing persons from low-income households? How can they improve the well-being of these persons, not only in terms of, hey, has their income increased? Do they have access to loans and credits? But also, how have you changed this person's feeling about themselves? Like, is their self-confidence increased? So a lot of what Heather just talked about, right? It's not just about income, health. It's also about looking at the person as a whole and what role that does that business that they interact with play. The other thing I wanted to talk about is, like I mentioned initially, there's this intergenerational poverty cycle, and there is research that looks at how to break the cycle. And I personally would like to be part of that movement to learn how to break the cycle. It's, is it as simple as sending a child to a good school? No, I don't think so. There has to be a lot more components in the environment that they're part of that works towards helping these children lead better lives than what their parents led, and then give their own children a better living standard. So I think those are some of the answers I want to find, and we are trying to do that here on the PMI team. One thing that we find in research that is showing up again and again is when you talk to, especially women, what are your aspirations for the future? It's always focused on their children. It's how do we give our children a better a better life. Sometimes it's as simple as give them better clothes, give them shoes, buy them a little treat, take them to the movies. You know, that's the kind of responses you hear from women when you say, how do you spend the increased income? So that's all wonderful to hear. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So both of your answers have really talked about sort of income and inequality and poverty, but also about happiness and well-being and perhaps thinking forward to the future. It is sounding like these answers could reduce suffering among people that you work with, or maybe I should rephrase my question. Why would these answers be important, or how do you see answers to these kinds of questions reducing suffering?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think to back up a little bit, I think it's really interesting because we're very interested in this, and some other people are, but sometimes businesses, they're there to make a profit. So it's been a learning journey to understand what resonates best with businesses, to want to care, so that they then are addressing some of these issues with how they sell a product or trying to increase the impact that they have on certain individuals. And so what we found, I think there's a good example from some of our research we did together, which actually, and with you as well, is we actually found that mixing some of these social metrics and these indicators around an individual and not only their income, but how they're feeling in their relationships with others, mixing that with some of the business indicators that a business cares about can help make a difference. And so let me go into the example, and I think it will enlighten us a little bit. But there was a company we were working with that had issues with sales and retention. And we were doing an impact study, and we found on the side that the business was actually improving the self-efficacy of the people it was employing. So self-efficacy being the individual's belief in their ability to do certain things. But we could have just ended there, and that would have been the end of the study. But we also knew from working closely with this business that sales and retention were an issue. So we began to just see if they were related. And we found that there was a relationship between sales and retention and self-efficacy. So then all of a sudden the business cares a lot more. It's not just about touting that they increase self-efficacy of the workers, but now they care because if they can increase self-efficacy of the workers, they can have better sales, which is more profit for them. And they can also reduce turnover, which saves them money. So I think kind of understanding the different stakeholders, the business perspective, as well as our interest as researchers in trying to make it a win-win situation is how this is going to really have a difference.
Thank you.
Yeah, and what I want to say with regards to this question is so many millions of dollars are spent on programming that is meant to reduce poverty, but time and again we often see that it's not really having the impact that the program hopes to have. And so a lot of it is around poor design, or it's just not contextually appropriate, or it's, somebody set the design in an office in, say, DC, but the programming is happening somewhere far away, where the culture is different, the people are different. And so we as researchers can help policymakers understand through rigorous data, through rigorous methods, through findings that stand up to the test of time, that you do need to alter your programming in a certain manner. You do need to take into account people's culture, their society, their sensibilities, in my opinion. And so what we're trying to do is, in addition to the more traditional impact evaluations that we carry out at PMI, we also do research on how can you improve monitoring and evaluation methods. And so how can you design studies where you're not waiting 3 years for the program to end to tell them, oops, you didn't have the impact that you wanted to, but tell them while they're implementing, hey, you know what, we found this new learning, let's adapt, let's change this program, let's use the research to really have the impact that you aim to have, reduce negative impacts. So many times we know that businesses unknowingly have negative impacts. And so how can you reduce those at the time of it happening versus 3 years later again? So I think this is how the answers and the work that we do, I think this is how the value we can bring to the field that we are in international development, but also to policymakers, to the society in general.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate both of you taking the time to come in and to talk to me and talk to us about your work. And thank all of you for listening to this segment. Thank you.